Join me tonight on Twitch and YouTube at 9 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. Link to join below. It should be a fun night as always, so be sure to be here to test out your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prize. Wait, what's going on? Oh god, turn it off, make it stop, please! I can't take this commercial anymore, for the love of God, please turn it off, please turn it off! Okay, we're okay, we're gonna be okay. Deep breaths. Okay, that's better. I don't even know how that got in here. Anyways, unless you've been living under a rock for this entire football season, you've seen these ads. You've seen these godforsaken ads that you'll never be able to get out of your head until the end of time. It's nice to know that when I'm feeling down, I'll always be able to have something giving me positive reinforcement and telling me that I rule. When I die, I wanted to read on my tombstone, Jaguar Gator 9. He had it his way. He ruled. It feels like these commercials are taking over our lives, and with the Burger King cinematic universe expanding with more ads and more variations on these ads, we're not going to forget that Burger King is the home of the Whopper for a while. I'll put it that way. Having said that, as much as a negative as this has been on all of our eardrums, and as much as this has melted our brains, there actually was a time half a century ago where Burger King played a huge part in the NFL playoffs with regards to the broadcasting of a particular game in the divisional round. Somehow, in the most topical video ever, I have managed to find and extensively research a video topic combining Burger King and the divisional round. There really is a story for everything when it comes to the NFL. Because in 1974, the Minnesota Vikings had a big playoff game at home in the divisional round. And the only reason it got to be televised was because of the generosity of none other than Burger King. On this day in 1974, it was Burger King, not us mere mortals, who ruled. Because this is the story behind one of the craziest broadcasting stories in the history of the divisional round of the playoffs. Before I talk about Burger King's actions and just how important they were in terms of helping the Vikings out, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, as well as what was supposed to happen prior to it. It's December 21st, 1974, and we have a divisional round playoff game in the NFC at Metropolitan Stadium between the Minnesota Vikings and the St. Louis Cardinals. Obviously, the importance of this game cannot be overstated, since it is a playoff game, where the winner moves on and the loser goes home. But even though this one is big for the Cardinals, who are in the postseason for the first time since 1948, and for the first time since they moved to St. Louis, this game might feel even bigger for this team right here, the Vikings, since the weight of the world is on their shoulders. After making it to the Super Bowl the previous year, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, they were the favorites going into 1974 to not only repeat, but to win the whole thing. And it felt like all the stars were aligned for them to make it back for the third time in the last 6 seasons. Anything less than a Super Bowl appearance would be a disappointment. For one, there was no dominant team in the NFC. All 4 teams that made the playoffs that season, including the Vikings, had an identical 10-4 record. However, you could absolutely make the argument that of those 4 10-4 teams, Minnesota was the best one. They had an absolutely stacked team with 7 Pro Bowlers, including 2 first-team All-Pros and future Hall of Famer Ron Yary on the offensive line, and future Hall of Famer Alan Page on the defensive line. They had a point differential of plus 115, which was the second best in the conference, only behind Washington, and the 4th best in the NFL, only behind Oakland and Pittsburgh. Their defense was nothing short of superb once again, as they allowed just 195 points over the course of the 14-game season, which was the 3rd best total in the NFL, and comes out to an average of under 14 points per game. They had a suffocating pass defense that allowed just 8 touchdown passes all season, which was the top total in the NFL, and forced 22 interceptions, meaning that opposing quarterbacks had a touchdown-to-interception ratio on them of roughly 1-3. That is nothing short of dominant. And to cap it all off, they enter the playoffs playing red-hot football, having not only won each of their last 3 games, but having done so by a combined score of 87-34. winning by an average of over 17.6 points per game. And if that wasn't great enough for the Vikings, they had home field advantage throughout the postseason. The 1974 season was the final season of one of the stupidest ideas in NFL history, where the playoff locations were determined entirely on a rotational basis. It's the same reason why in 1972, the Miami Dolphins, despite being undefeated and the de facto number 1 seed in the AFC, had to play the AFC Championship on the road at Pittsburgh. This season, it just so happened that the NFC Central had home field throughout the playoffs. So no matter what happened in the wildcard game between Washington and Los Angeles, if the Vikings won their game against the Cardinals, a team that they were favored by 7 points to beat, and a team that they beat earlier in the regular season on the road, then they would be hosting the NFC Championship. So with all that in mind, you would think that tickets for this game right here would be selling like hotcakes, right? Any playoff game should be selling out with no problem, but especially this one at Metropolitan Stadium to watch a team that many consider to be the Super Bowl favorites. This should be easy, right? Well, not quite. Because for whatever reason, since this was late 1974, trying to sell tickets for this game was about as fruitful as trying to stop everybody from kung fu fighting. For some reason, Minnesota wasn't getting hooked on a playoff feeling, as people didn't really care whether they were there or not to watch the Vikings try taking care of business. Now, there were a few reasons for this. Number one, the weather was projected to be absolutely brutal. You had projected kickoff temperatures in the high teens and the low 20s, which might not seem too bad by itself, but when you combine that with the possibility of snow and winds of anywhere from 10 to 16 miles per hour, yeah, that can be a bit of a problem, and you can see why fans might be deterred from coming, especially so close to the holiday season, where they'll be seeing family and they don't want to get sick. A game with a wind chill of 9 degrees is not exactly a game that people want to watch in person. And this made a big difference, because once the weather got worse, the attendance got worse. In 1974, the Vikings had 7 home games, 5 of which came in the first 3 months of the season, and 2 of which, their Week 12 win over the New Orleans Saints and their Week 13 win over the Atlanta Falcons, came in the month of December. For the Saints game, the wind chill was 15 degrees, and for the Falcons game, it was 19 degrees. Keep in mind that this Cardinals game was going to be worse than that, and was going to have the added element of snow, which also makes it a pain to drive to the venue. Here's a look at their attendance for the first 5 games compared to the final 2. Over the first 5 games of 1974, the Vikings averaged 47,626 fans per game. In December, that number dropped to 45,635, or roughly a 5% decrease. The same thing happened in 1969, when the Vikings made their first Super Bowl in franchise history. They got over 47,000 fans for every single game, right up until their home finale against the San Francisco 49ers on December 14th, where that number dropped to 43,028 fans in a game that was played with a kickoff wind chill of 9 degrees. On top of the cold weather, you could absolutely make the argument that there was significant playoff fatigue setting in. This was Minnesota's 6th trip to the playoffs in the last 7 seasons. Making the postseason at this point was business as usual. The thrill was gone to some extent, especially with the knowledge that the Vikings were favored to win this game pretty handily, and that they would just be doing it all over again back in the Met the following week. This was Minnesota's 6th home playoff game in the last 6 years, and even though it's the playoffs, when you consider the cold weather and the frequency of their playoff appearances and their playoff games at home, that can be a tough sell. And unfortunately for the Vikings, by the time Wednesday morning hit, there were more than 3,800 tickets still available for this game. This was a big deal, because per NFL rules, if a game did not sell out within 72 hours of kickoff, then it would be blacked out in the home market. In other words, if every single seat at the Met was not sold out, then no one would be able to watch the game. Now, part of the reason why this didn't necessarily encourage all Vikings fans to come was because a ton of businesses in the area, from clubs to hotels to public viewing parties at parks, figured out ways to get around the blackout, installing large antennas so that they could pick up the signal outside of the blackout radius, and get the signal from Iowa or Wisconsin. But for those who just wanted to stay at home, unless all the tickets could be sold, they were straight out of luck. And that's when one business in particular had an idea, because you might be able to see where this one is going. Burger King had a huge presence in Minneapolis back in the 1970s, and it's not hard to see why, since they were owned by Pillsbury, which was a Minneapolis-based company. Of the 1,300 restaurants that Burger King had in 1974, there were 24 that were located just in the Twin Cities alone. Minneapolis-St. Paul in the Twin Cities area is 6,364 square miles. So that comes out to one Burger King every 265 square miles if you're doing the math at home. And when they heard the news that the Vikings might get blacked out, they had the idea to buy up all the remaining tickets to ensure that the game could be sold out. Now, this might not seem like a novel concept today. We've seen plenty of stories over the years involving businesses and TV stations buying up the remaining tickets to prevent a blackout. Most notably in 2002, when supermarket chain Winn-Dixie made sure no matter what, that the games involving the Jacksonville Jaguars would be televised. But back in 1974, this was almost unheard of. This was practically unprecedented. This was the first time in the over decade and a half long history of the Minnesota Vikings that someone even attempted to do this. And even getting this idea off the ground was hard. Jim Winstead, a regional manager for Burger King, was supposed to fly to Omaha for a business meeting. In fact, from all accounts that I could find, Winstead was literally about to board the plane for Omaha on Braniff Airlines. That's when Burger King got the news and found out that tickets were still available for this game. Burger King officials were somehow able to reach Winstead and prevent him from getting on that plane, and instead got him on a flight to Minneapolis. How this all happened and was coordinated in 1974, considering the obvious lack of technology and the extreme amount of coordination that this required, I have no clue. But whatever the case, Winstead was now on a flight to Minneapolis. Still, the flight had to get in on time with no delays, and he had to make sure he got transportation and had no problem getting to the stadium. No extensions were to be given. The 72-hour deadline was a hard deadline, so time was of the essence. There was so much that could have gone wrong, as this was a somewhat frantic moment. Just to recap, in the matter of one morning, you have to somehow get in contact with people at another location, change your entire flight information and bags if necessary, have the flight land on time during December, a month that is notorious for weather delays and snow and poor weather. Then get a cab, have the cab get to the stadium without hitting any traffic, and then wait in line if anyone else was buying tickets, and hope that the line moved quickly and that nothing was wrong in Minnesota's ticket office. When you put it like that, this impromptu plan seemed borderline insane. However, somehow, with not even 40 minutes before the mandatory blackout was imposed, and with thousands upon thousands of tickets still available, it was as though a Christmas miracle occurred. Because Winstead was able to make it to the front of the line, and asked Andy Vrabel, the man selling tickets at the window for the Vikings, "Can I buy all the tickets that are left?" Now there were about 15 people behind Winstead at that point, so those 15 people got accommodated first, which worked out for everyone obviously, because that's more physical bodies in the seats, more happy fans, and less money that Burger King has to spend. But while that was happening, Winstead pulled out a blank check. And right before the 72-hour deadline, Winstead wrote a check for $44,924, buying 518 tickets at $10 apiece, and 3,312 tickets at $12 apiece. In total, Burger King bought well over 3,800 tickets for this playoff contest. And just like that, the game was able to be seen on local TV. Burger King's popularity took a massive rise for doing this, as the $45,000 expense, which comes out to roughly $267,000 in today's money, was completely worth it in their eyes. As Christian Schoenleb, the vice president for marketing, said on doing this, "I garnered us a lot of publicity. It gave us a good feeling of responsibility that we all like to feel when you're having a good year." Translation, the local team, if you want to call them that, was doing well, and we want people to be happy during the holiday season and watch their team play. So why not do this? And on top of that, Burger King put out this full-page advertisement in local newspapers, saying, at 12 o'clock, an early Christmas gift will be delivered into your living room. We want you to have it your way. And the best part for Vikings fans? Not only were they now able to see the game on TV at home, but they got to see their team win. As when all was said and done, the Vikings, to the surprise of no one, prevailed quite easily, winning it 30-14. Even though the Cardinals had a 7-0 lead at one point, and the game was tied at 7 apiece at the half, the Vikings were too much for the Cardinals to handle, as they completely pulled away in the second half, leading at 30-7 at one point late in the fourth quarter, before a garbage time touchdown made the scoreline a bit more respectable, even if it was still a 3-possession game, since the 2-point conversion did not exist back then. Chuck Foreman had his way with the Cardinals on the ground, picking up 114 yards on 23 carries, averaging just under 5 yards per carry, while also picking up 54 receiving yards, meaning that he had 168 yards from scrimmage. Combine that with Dave Osborne running for an additional 67 yards, and also picking up over 100 yards from scrimmage, and combined with a poor game from quarterback Jim Hart, who only completed 45% of his passes and finished the game with a passer rating of 58.3, which was more than 21 points lower than his season average where he was named a Pro Bowler and a second-team All-Pro, and it's not hard to see why the Vikings completely destroyed the Cardinals on this day. So when all was said and done, everything worked out. The game was shown on TV. Burger King got a massive PR win in exchange for a fairly minor financial hit in the grand scheme of things. And Vikings fans were happy, wherever they were watching the game. All's well that ends well. Because on this December day in 1974, Burger King, thanks to their generosity, wanted to remind Vikings fans that they could have it their way. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.